300. Make sure your shelf is in the middle, on the middle rack. And the other thing I like to start out with is making sure you have washed and cleaned hands, which Sandy and I have already done. So make sure your hands are clean, turn on the oven, get it nice and warmed up. And once again, welcome everyone to our kitchen. I'm Beth-Ann.
And I'm Sandy.
And she's my
sisters.
Yeah, sisters.
You could call me the older sister.
The older sister, yes, I was.
Like
and the baby. And we want to thank everyone for joining us this morning, and welcome to Seattle. The weather is gorgeous here today. Just a beautiful summer day, and we're ready to cook and make some yummy food.
Yes.
So
if everybody's ready, we're going to start with the filling.
Yes.
And Beth-Ann is going to make that, and I'm going to just turn the camera so you can see her make it over there.
Yes. So we're going to start with the filling. And oh, I forgot to take out the grinder, but I like to put everything in the food processor because it's just easy. Can you do this? Easier that way. I don't know what the people did in the olden days. I really don't. Without a food processor, this would be a very long, hard process. You want to move it just a little bit closer. So you got our food processor, and what we're going to do is put 3 cups of nuts in there, and you can use a variety of nuts, pistachios, pine nuts, walnuts, almonds, pecans, any kind of nuts that you like. So I'm just going to pour 3 cups in my food processor. Oops. And then we're going to add 2/3 cup of sugar. I like to use just a little less because the syrup that we put on in the end is very sweet. So I don't like it too sweet. Our 2/3 cup of sugar, and then 1 tablespoon of cinnamon. I'm just going to pour that right in. And then I'm going to add 1/3 cup of sesame. Put that in there, all this goodness. And then we're going to use the grated. We're going to use the grated peel of a lemon or a small orange. Actually, I'm just going to do that in here.
Okay.
Yeah.
You go for it.
So I have my planer, and I'm just going to. I like to have this washed too before I do that. So we're just going to add that in there. Some people prefer to use orange, but we've always made it with lemon. So we're just going to put the grate in there. And once you have all of your ingredients in your food processor, you're just going to turn it on, and the consistency that you want is like a sand, really fine consistency.
So a lot of people have joined us since you started naming those ingredients. So can you name them all again so everyone's on the same page?
Absolutely. I put in, this is the very beginning of our process here. So I put in my food processor 3 cups of nuts, and it can be a mixture of any kind of nuts you like: pistachio, almond, walnut, pine nuts, anything. Put that in there, and then we did 2/3 cup of sugar, 1 tablespoon of cinnamon, a 1/4 cup of sesame seeds, and then the grated rind of a lemon or small orange. Now we're going to put that in there. I'm going to turn this on. And again, we're going for a consistency of like a sand.
All right, while she is grinding that up, I just want to say welcome to everybody. I know we had to get things underway. So welcome to everyone from everywhere. I want to thank SBA, Sephardic Bikor Cholim, for hosting this, along with the Sephardic Brotherhood of America. I want to thank Sharon Adato for all of her help of getting these programs up. And I really want to thank Beth-Ann and Sandy Varon for making all of this food happen. Yum.
Thank you. So this is what it looks like. It's a very sand, fine consistency. Everyone see that? It's very fine.
All right, so Arlene is concerned in the chat that the amounts that you use now were different than the ones on the Google Doc. So,
They should be.
okay,
3 cups nuts, 2/3 or less cups sugar, 1 tablespoon cinnamon, 1/4 cup sesame seeds. Is that different?
I want to check.
Hi, Leon and Shoshana. So we have our nut mixture and we're gonna move it over there to start with the fila. I can do that, okay.
Hi. So we're going to work on layering now. And we have to start with some melted butter, which we're going to just melt in the microwave. If you want it to be parve, you can use the margarine, we have like this Earth's Best stuff.
That's the kind I prefer if you're gonna make it parve.
But we really like it with butter, is better.
I think butter is better with everything.
Yeah, you could use, if you're out of all of this, you could probably use vegetable oil also.
Olive oil.
Well, olive oil will give it also that olive oil taste a little bit, but butter is what we prefer. And I think what most of the recipes have listed. We're going to use the Apollo fila. And so it comes in this box. The first time we made it, there wasn't enough fila in one box, so you might, depending on the kind of fila that you get, need 2 boxes. And the thing with filo is that it is very thin and it's very easy to kind of get broken. So, and it dries out very easily. So you want to keep your filo covered with a slightly damp towel when you're working with it. So just like you can wet a towel or a paper towel and just put it on so it doesn't dry out. Be over the plastic though. Oh, I just usually put it right on. Beth-Ann says put it over the plastic.
Yeah, so because I don't want the fila to stick to each other.
Okay. So I'm going to start by just painting a little bit of butter at the bottom of the pan.
Make sure your butter is nicely melted.
And then after we put that on, we're going to layer the fila with layers of fila and then layers of butter in between. And we're going to do 8 layers like that. We're going to go fila dough and then butter and then fila and then butter. Okay.
Can you turn your camera down for a second so we can see that happening?
Like that. Filo. And then I'm just painting very gently some butter on it. You have to be very gentle with filo or it's going to break. And if it breaks, it's really not a big deal because you could just, you know, kind of put it together and put another layer on top of it. It's kind of a forgiving recipe, I think. If you like a little bit more filling, you can make a little more or less.
Yeah, we're not so particular here. You know, I think this is maybe an easier recipe than some of the other fila recipes because we're not making individual wrapping of anything. We're just layering it upon layer. It's a lot of butter and a lot of fila. And as much as I love butter, go easy on the butter because this is not a sprint, it's a marathon, and we have a lot of layers to get through. So,
do you want to angle it down?
yeah, go easy on the butter. But I do love butter, and in the end, it's going to give it almost like a caramely flavor to the fila. That's one of the things I love most about baklava. So, yeah, if your layers break apart or whatever, no big deal. Just kind of piece it together in your pan right here. And also make sure that you kind of pat out all the bubbles. You want it, each layer to lay flat on top of the next layer. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect. It's all going to taste the same in the end.
3, 4, this takes a while.
So while Sandy's doing that, I just want to say there are many different kinds of phyllo dough out there. There is this kind that you can find a lot of your local grocery stores, Athens phyllo dough. I really like this Apollo phyllo dough, and I got this at Big John's, which is on Rainier and Dearborn. I really like this kind. And it, unfortunately, it's not fresh. It was frozen. That's what the clerks told me there, but it's just, I think it's just better quality, but whatever. Or you can make your own phyllo dough if you so choose, right?
If you're very brave.
I know I've never done it before, but I'm going to do it one of these days.
Are you offering to do a video on it?
Do you want to do a video on
video making phyllo dough? I never done it. I know our mother never did it. So I think I would have to practice that first, and then we can do another video. Yes. So while she's doing that, I thought maybe I would talk a little bit about our family sort of journey here when it comes to food. We grew up with a mom who was Ashkenazic and our father was Sephardic. And my mother would joke sometimes it was a intermarriage, coming of two worlds together. And as children, we had the best of both worlds. Our mother made a lot of amazing Ashkenazic food, and we were together a lot for the holidays with that side of our family. Our table extended 20, 30 relatives were together on my mother's side. And then again, we had that on our father's side as well. We were very lucky that way. So we grew up with Sephardic and Ashkenazic food. I always thought it was sort of a Jewish thing, part of our Jewish culture. I never thought growing up, when I went to my public Graham Hill Elementary, that my friends were having baklava at, you know, their holiday celebrations. So it was really surprising to me when I was in my early 20s and I went to a specialty store. It was not a Jewish specialty store. It might have been Greek or a Middle Eastern. I think it was a Middle Eastern specialty store. And lo and behold, behind their glass cabinets, they were selling baklava. And I was like, wait a minute, this isn't a Jewish specialty store. It's a Middle Eastern, you know, how can this be? I thought it was just, you know, only Jewish people knew about baklava. And little did we know that there's a long history to baklava, and actually a little bit of controversy when we were researching it, because a lot of countries like to claim it as their own, as that it originated, you know, in Greece or originated in Turkey, or there's been like wars to fight up who started making baklava first. And in our research, we found that there are many mentions of it starting around the Ottoman Empire. And the Ottoman Empire was not just one country, it was a huge area, mostly surrounding the Mediterranean Sea. And as countries sort of divided up, I think that they kind of adapted their own uniqueness to the baklava recipe. Our family came from Spain into Turkey and settled in Turkey and lived there for several hundred years. And I think while the Varon family was there, the Mezzostrano family was there, they adopted some of the local customs and recipes. And I think that's how baklava came into part of our family history. Ben, are you?
Yep, we're up to 8. I don't know if you could see that, but there's 8 layers there. We're gonna add on top of that, about a quarter of your filling on top. And we're just gonna sprinkle it on and then just spread it around. And I'm gonna tilt this a little so you can see a little better.
You can like,
Yes,
yeah, you can like use your hands to spread it around.
you just spread it around. And then we're going to repeat this with 3 layers now of phyllo, and then the nuts, and we're going to do that 3 more times.
So here we go.
What
This
did I
one has
do?
a little crinkle in
Yeah.
it. No big deal.
Not perfect fila, but we're good. Little extra fila there. I like it.
So, where were we in our story? Ottoman Empire.
We were talking about the Ottoman Empire. So I think you basically said the history of baklava, right?
Yeah.
So with Jewish people, what we were reading about with the Sephardim is that a lot of times people will serve baklava at Rosh Hashanah because it's sweet, for a sweet year, for Purim also. And what I read actually was that for Rosh Hashanah baklava, you should use, like, a lot of people will use almonds, light nuts, and not dark nuts, so that you don't have a dark year, you have a good year filled with light. I had never heard that before, but you know, it's good to research things and figure this out. So I like it. Our baklava is going to be very light today.
Yeah.
Just coincidentally.
I'd like to hear some more about your family and food.
Our family. So when our mom married our dad, she decided that she wanted to make Sephardic food. She knew how to make a lot of Ashkenazic food. She baked a lot with her mom, and continued to do so. But when she had to learn Sephardic food, she didn't really know where to go. They didn't have an internet back then. And we had aunties, great aunties, actually. Our Auntie Ida Mezestrano, she'd always talk about how Auntie Ida taught her how to do a lot of her cooking. She would also tell her stories about our dad and his family growing up as she was doing it. So we had all these stories about the different personalities in that family. But and then also my Auntie Ray, who was my mom's sister-in-law, also taught her a lot about Sephardic cooking. But by the time we were old enough to know, it seemed like our mom was an expert at cooking. Sephardic, like she would make barekas for every week for Shabbat and bolemas every week for Shabbat. And I wouldn't have known that she wasn't Sephardic if she hadn't told me that. So we grew up eating a lot of the Sephardic foods and not so much with the Ashkenazic foods. And we used to have holidays. At nights, we would go to my Auntie Ray's house, which was Sephardic, and we would have foods there, so the hiratzonos and everything there. And then during the day, my mom's side of the family would come to our house, and we would have lunches. So we grew up with a lot, knowing our cousins really well and knowing our relatives just over the holidays. And it's just something you sort of take for granted. Oh, there's my cousin Karen online too, from Florida. So, you know, we had this whole ability to know our family in a way that a lot of my non-Jewish friends don't know their families. They don't even know who their cousins are because of not just the food, but just our culture and our heritage, which is so nice. My mom learned a lot from going to synagogue baking for bazaar, but they would only at the beginning let her man the ovens because she didn't know what she was doing. And you know, so she had to work her way up to like making the different foods. But she learned a lot by watching, and we learned a lot by watching our mom cook. Our mom passed away kind of young and unexpectedly, and so a lot of what we learned was from watching her. And then I would call my aunts and say, I don't know what I'm doing, and they would come over and help me. So you know, you just kind of learn by watching and looking. Anyways, I'm up to my next layer of the nuts.
All right. So how many layers did you stack together? That's a question in the chat box. I was just listening about your family, but how many did you layer in the bottom?
3 layers. So the bottom had 8 layers. So that's sort of the base that keeps everything together. The next layer, after you do the nuts, is another 3 layers. And then we're going to do 3 layers again and 3 layers again. So there's 3 sets of 3 layers before we get to the top. So I'm on my second set of 3 layers. And if we're going fast, let me know, I can slow down too.
I feel like there should be a Torah message in the numbers, like, you know, Abraham, Isaac, and
Right.
Jacob for each of the levers, or the Shalosh Regalim, the 3 special festivals. I don't know.
Right. That's a good way to remember, is that you've got 3 sets for the Shalosh Regalim of 3. I know there should be something mystical there.
I mean, and 8 is really mystical. That's like transcendental and above and beyond. 7 are the days of the week, so that's ordinary. 8 takes things to a higher level. So our foundation for our baklava is already taking us to a higher level. All right, so Claudine is asking, do you put the nuts again after 3 layers?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm just finishing up my second set of 3 layers of fila and
Can you
butter.
tilt it down so we can see it again?
Like that.
Nice. Thank you.
So we're going to do this 2 more times.
Okay, we're ready for another set of nuts.
So I'm going to just use half of what we have left over. Lots of layers to this. And like I said earlier, lots of butter. It's so nice to see everyone. Hi, Julie. Are there any other questions, Sharona?
Not yet. There's no other questions yet. So are we on our last layer now? Is that?
We are on our 3rd layer of 3 before we get to the topping. And for anybody who was a little late tuning in, the oven should be set to 300. So if you haven't turned it on, now's a good time.
Yes. Keep on layering. I was doing a little more research on the history of baklava, and they were saying also that this is a wealthy person's food. I think because of all the nuts and the fila that wasn't always easy to come by back in the day.
Oh,
And
now we
then-
have questions coming in. Sorry. All right.
But I love how these countries fought over who started the baklava, and you know, it's such a delicious treat that everyone wants a piece of it, I guess.
Oops, I feel it's sticking a little.
I like the idea of it being many layered and how we are many layered as well. Sharon Adato shares that she remembers your mother fondly. She was a pillar of our community. She'd be so excited and proud to see you teaching this.
Oh, thank you, Sharon. That's so sweet of you. That's so kind of you. This is what I wanted to read to everyone because I just thought this was really sweet, really interesting. Baklava was baked only on special occasions, usually by the rich who could afford such a luxury. A poor man used to exclaim, "I am not rich enough to eat baklava in my house." Things have changed over the years, and now you can order baklava anytime, and you do not have to be a millionaire to enjoy the great taste. But I do kind of like to reserve this for, you know, sort of special occasions. And every time I've brought it somewhere, people are so impressed and so wowed by it. I can do.
Okay.
And you know, and it's really not that hard to make. I think people are maybe a little intimidated by, you know, working with fila, but it really is not that hard. It's just, you know, it's a little bit on the thin side, but it's, you know, don't be intimidated.
People want to know what pan size and if they can half the recipe to a smaller dish.
Yes, it's a 9 by 13. See, it's really like easy to work with. It's a 9 by 13, but I imagine you can have it. You don't have to make this this big of a dish. But I would also cut the baklava or the fila. I cut the fila sheets to fit into your pan. And you can do that with the knife before you start working.
And just cut it all together, not in, don't separate it before you cut.
Oh, that's good to know. Can you tilt it down so we can see the magic again?
The magic, it's not magic. It's not rocket science. Anyone can make this. Can you see it, Sharona?
I can. It looks amazing. All right, Julie wants to know what your preferred brand of fila is. So you explained it before, but can you show us again for everyone who's joined us?
This is my preferred brand, Apollo, which once again you can get at Big John's, which is a supply store, an Italian supply store in Seattle. But really, you'd be amazed at how easy it is to find fila in the cool section of your grocery store, usually by the whipped cream and the frozen fruit dessert area. So, and then I think they also come in small squares, but you want the sheets, the fila sheets. That's important. I think I've made that mistake before. Brought it home and opened the package to realize that I couldn't make my baklava.
Okay, so the top layer is supposed to be 5 sheets. I don't think we said that. And that's what we're doing now.
Okay,
Is the top layer.
so we're doing, yeah, we're finish line is close, yes, because we're all done with our nut mixture. We did quarter
sec parts. And if you have extra nuts or you have extra fila and you want to go up higher, you can. There's no rules.
No rules. You can finish up with 6 layers of fila or 3 layers of fila or 10 layers of fila. When people are eating this delicious dessert, no one's going to be counting the layers of fila that you put down.
All right. Does it freeze well?
I didn't see anything about freezing. And
I did though.
Oh, did
Yeah, it does freeze well, actually. So once it's all done, to store it, you can just put it in an airtight container and keep it on your counter if you prefer your baklava on the crispy side. Or you can put it in an airtight container and put it in the refrigerator if you prefer your baklava on the chewy side, which I do. It just tastes delicious. Or you can put it in the freezer. But if you keep it on the counter or you keep it in the fridge, it should last up to 2 weeks. It has a long staying power of freshness. And then also, I think that you can assemble your baklava together and then put it in the freezer. And then when you're ready to, take it out of the freezer or the refrigerator and bake it then.
That would take a lot of willpower more than the staying power to keep it on your bench top or your refrigerator without eating it.
Another reason I like to keep it in the fridge, so it's out of sight, out of mind. But I like it chewy.
I've never had the opportunity to make baklava and put it in a freezer before my kids have consumed it. So we've never had a problem with storage in our family. Okay, so I think that's it for the 5 layers of fila on the top. And so our next step is that we are going to cut the fila, but not the baklava, but not all the way through. What we want to do is kind of make our marks, our cuts, about halfway, 3/4 of the way through. Makes it easier after it's baked to cut it up without it all crumbling on you. And also when it's time to pour the syrup on it, which we're going to do after it bakes, it makes it so that the syrup gets absorbed better through the baklava. So we're going to just cut it into, our tradition shape is diamonds. So we're going to cut it into diamonds before we bake it.
I think people,
and that's what it looks like. Oops, that's what it looks like right now.
and I think people even consider this scoring the top of it, but I like to try and just get into the top few layers of the baklava I don't know if you want to hold the camera up. So while I do,
Hold on, let me wash my hands.
Because as many of you like jumped ahead at the recipe, what we're going to be doing while this is cooking is making a syrup. And when this comes out of the oven, not only cutting it beforehand will help it cook more evenly, but it'll help the syrup absorb through the layers.
I'm just tilting so you can see what she's doing.
So I just try and cut it at a diagonal. And of course, the closer the lines, the smaller the pieces, but the more you'll get out of it, the more pieces you will make. Okay, so then I just turn it and do it this way. This gets a little tricky. Little tricky here.
It kind of helps if you hold down the tops as you're cutting so they don't just.
So Claudine wanted clarity of, did you end with a third layer of filas or did you add more filas before cutting?
We did top 5 layers on the top.
So it went 8, 3, 3, 3, 5?
Yes.
So for a total of, I think 22 is what we figured out.
But you can do 8, 3, 3, 7 or 5, 3, 3, 4, or, you know, whatever you have, whatever you feel like doing. Okay.
Do you have any recommendations on getting the cuts through without damaging the fila in the process?
No, you just kind of hold it down, and you're not damaging anything, not damaging. You're just kind of, sometimes with the knife, it kind of lifts up and you just got to pat it back into place. But you can feel while you're doing this with your knife that you're not going all the way through. You're just getting like the top few layers. So.
Right. Can you tilt it down so we can see the very impressive cutting work?
Years of practice. No, I'm just kidding. There we go. So, you know, and if something comes up, just pat it back down in place. There you go.
So some people like to top their baklava with sesame seeds. Some people like to top it with cloves, whole cloves, which adds a little extra flavor while it's cooking. You just don't want to eat the cloves after they bake, but that's what we usually do. So we're going to just poke a clove in each little piece of baklava here.
We'll show it to you when we're all done, but what we're doing is taking each individual clove like this, and we're sticking it in the middle of the diamond.
That's really neat. I've never noticed them to be inside before. I don't think I've had baklava with cloves. I've always had it with nuts or with sesame on top. This is a fun variation. Right. They're frozen for me. I'm going to assume that they're frozen for everybody and that they'll be back on very soon. But for everyone else, if you're really making this at home, your oven should be at 300. Your layers should be ready. I hope everyone's going to be sharing it with other people because yum. I'm looking forward to eating baklava. Come back, guys, come back. Earlier in the chat, there was a question about what other Sephardic foods they eat at Rosh Hashanah. The Varon sisters. And I want to invite everybody who wants a really good answer for what foods we eat on Rosh Hashanah to join next Sunday for Jeannie Myman to do the next workshop in Yehirat Zones and baking more. Jeannie, do you have a plan for what we're making next week yet?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So I invited my sister-in-law, Esther Norman, to come on and make the pumpkin fila, because she always makes the fila and I make the prasa and we trade. So she's going to do that. And perhaps I will do a few pumpkin borekas. And then I'm going to talk about all the different kinds of spinach you can make without cheese. You know, some people make pinwheels, some people make a fritada, some people make, filicas, there's a million things you can do. And then basically maybe talk about just a couple of the ones that we're not going to be showing, but, talk about what the possibilities are, like the sheep's head. We won't be having any sheep's head on our show.
Bummer, I was looking for, no. It was not.
So, it'll be, the two things that I mentioned will be shown, and then we will just sort of gloss over the other aspects of what we'd be eating. So if anybody has any questions or suggestions, that's fine.
I really enjoyed last week's, and we ate the apple dulce for Shabbat dessert, and they were yum. And now we'll make them again for Rosh Hashanah.
Right. Once you do it, then you realize that it's not a terrible thing to do. But when you've not seen it or you've not tried to make it, it seems daunting.
That's how I'm feeling about baklava right now. I just assumed that would be something that I would always purchase and never make. But Beth-Ann and Sandy have made it seem so easy.
Right, and you have a lot of help.
I do.
So easy. It's so easy. Sorry that we lost our connection. This is something you can do with your children, especially putting in the
nuts. They lost it again.
I have one left. Wasn't you're unmuted? Can you hear us?
Yeah, sorry. That was my mistake. Welcome back.
Or sorry. So, we lost one. Hold on. Okay, we're almost done here. Last one. Okay.
All right, let's see this tray. Whoa.
Sort of like a little quilt, I think.
Isn't that pretty?
It's beautiful.
Okay, so we're going to put this in the oven at 300 for like an hour.
For 1 hour. And while that is cooking, we're going to make our syrup. And the syrup is really easy to do. So I'm just going to bring you guys over to the oven, the stove. Sandy, can you help me?
Yes.
So for the syrup, you are going to take 1/3 cup of water and 1/3 cup of sugar, and turn on your burner, and you're going to dissolve the sugar in there. And we're going to cook this, keep stirring for about 10 minutes. This is how you make a simple syrup. So you're just going to let it cook. Kind of stirring it around. Simple syrup. Simple syrup. That's a tongue twister. Simple syrup. I have a hard time saying that. So you just kind of mix it around and around and say hi to all of your relatives and friends. How are you doing, Jack? Good to see you. It's really nice to see everyone.
All right, so while you're stirring that up, there was a question earlier about what sort of special foods your family had for Rosh Hashanah. So Jeannie, when you were gone, was talking about the hiratzones and what she's doing in the next baking workshop. And for the person who asked in the chat, I'm trying to find the link for it, but it's the same Zoom channel as this one in the same time slot. So you could pretend like you're just replacing Sandy and Beth-Ann picture with Jeannie, and then it's the same, all the details you found for this next week. I'll try to find the actual picture though. But Beth-Ann, tell us about Rosh Hashanah in your house.
Well, we also have the hiratzones. It's almost like a little seder before the meal. And by the time you're done eating all the foods, you're too full for the actual dinner, but then there's all these wonderful foods that come and you just want to keep eating. My aunt would make the most delicious lemon salmon. So delicious. And yeah, we, Sandy and I have sort of tweaked a few things over the years, and we don't make the calabaza, the individual pumpkins. We have like a squash souffle that we kind of substitute. But the hiratzones really are just symbols of the beginning of a brand new year. A lot of them represent the head. We should always be at the forefront. And really, it's just a time to get together with your family, you know, just to be together. And this year is absolutely crazy to think that no one's, you know, you can't go to shul, you can't get together with your extended friends or family. It's just amazing that this time last year, if someone said to me, you're not going to be going to synagogue for Rosh Hashanah, I wouldn't believe them.
Well,
So,
and they do have services there.
in a very small
Small way.
limited schedule, yeah.
Right, we
So,
are having services inside and outside, and we are making it as available as we can, and we're condensing services so that that nobody would be indoors together for more than, I think it's 2.5 hours. There's going to be a Zoom before Rosh Hashanah and before Yom Kippur to try to put us in the spirit of things. So there definitely are things, and there are sign-up sheets. So if you're in Seattle and you are wanting to be coming, look for the emails or contact the rabbi for information on doing that, because that's important to us, that people have a fulfilling Rosh Hashanah in the right way. All right, there was a question for you guys to talk about your background.
Oh, we sort of already did, but we can do that again. Our father grew up in Seattle, and his parents came from Turkey. Not only did his parents come from Turkey directly to Seattle, but all of my father's aunts and uncles came as well. So my dad growing up, he was with his extended family on his mother's side, the Mezistrano side, and the Varon side. They all were here. So he grew up, and then on our mother's side, she's Ashkenazic, and her mother and father, well, her mother was born in New York, but they came and moved to Seattle, and my mother was born in Seattle. And when our parents got married, our mother came with all of her traditions, her wonderful Ashkenazic cooking, but she didn't know any of the Sephardic foods. So our lovely aunts took her under their wing, our Auntie Ida and our Auntie Matilda, our Auntie Lenora, and all of our aunts. I can just actually picture them, hearing them with their accents. Honey, it's going to be okay. This is how you do it. And so when I cook, whether it's making barekas or baklava, I always sort of hold my grandparents and my great aunts and uncles sort of in my heart. I feel like their spirit kind of lives on through us, and their traditions, it carries through. So I really think about them when I make these foods for my own family.
We need to add
Okay.
the honey.
So once it's been about 10 minutes of stirring, we're going to do 3 tablespoons of honey, or lemon juice, pardon me, lemon juice. And you want to measure the honey? We're gonna do like a cup and a half of the honey,
Cup and a third.
or a cup and a third, pardon me. And in the recipe that I'm following, and the recipe that I like to use, it comes from a lady in from Izmir, Turkey. She still lives in Turkey. This is her recipe. Hopefully she's still alive. And I'll show you the cookbook that I use in a second. It's a cookbook compiled of recipes, of Sephardic recipes from all over the world.
Got another.
Here. Because of course, my grandparents and my great aunts never wrote anything down. They just knew it from memory, from learning it from their parents, their moms, and their grandparents, and so on and so forth.
I don't think they measured anything either.
I don't think they measured anything either, Sandy says. I think they just a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and mixed it all together.
And they became experts that way. In addition to that cookbook, if people are interested in the blue SBH cookbook, you should contact the SBH office, for where finally our Sephardic community made the efforts, not I, before my time, to write those recipes down and be able to share them. But it's amazing for all of these recipes that were done this way to be able to share them, that we can share them with our families and then be able to share them around the world. It's really cool.
Now, my secret ingredient that are found in some recipes, but not other recipes, and I didn't include this in the recipe, in the ingredient list, I'm sorry, is rose water. And I'm just gonna add a little bit. Oh, if
It's
you can
pretty,
open it.
yeah, it's pretty strong stuff. So you
Strong.
don't want to put very much in.
You can also get that at specialty stores, yeah. Just
Or the grocery store actually had it.
oh,
right beside
Thriftway,
your
she got it at Thriftway.
No, I can't even get it open.
We're having problems opening it. But what you want to do is take this off the heat. And while your baklava is cooking, you want this to cool.
So put in like a capful.
There we go.
It's very strong, so you really don't want to.
Let me smell it. I want to smell it. It smells like perfume. It's rose water. Now add that in there. So as I was saying, you want to cool this mixture. I usually just cool it on the counter. I guess you could put it in the refrigerator. But what you want to do is cool the syrup. And then when your baklava comes out of the oven warm, you want to put the cold syrup over the warm baklava. And that, I think, helps absorb it all together, because you don't want your baklava to come out soupy. So should we do that now, Steve? Oh, we have about 10 more. Oh, we have about 10 more minutes here. We did another baklava, so we have about 10 more minutes before that becomes done. But I did want to show you. This is the cookbook, Cooking the Sephardic Way. This is the cookbook that I got this recipe from, that I've been using for years. And it's from the Sephardic Sisterhood of Los Angeles, California, located on Wilshire Boulevard. And this was my late Auntie Ann Israel's book. And what I like about it is that it is composed of recipes from people, from women around the world. This recipe is made, comes from Havana, Cuba, Turkey, Istanbul, Caesarea, Greece, but it's all Sephardic traditions, and that's why I really like this one. And then there's this one, Sephardic Cooking. This is not the one you were talking about, Sharona, is it? I think that's the original.
Yeah, I think that's the original. Ours doesn't have that cover anymore. So cherish the old ones, but no, you can get a new one with similar recipes.
Yeah, so this is from our synagogue here in Seattle. And then I have this one, the Sephardic Cooks, Kome Kangana. And this one's from, this is compiled from Congregation or Shalom Sisterhood of Atlanta, Georgia. And the first edition of this is 1971. Then they revised it in 1981. And then the third edition, which is this one, is 1983. So, yeah, and it's just amazing. They make the yaprakis and the stuffed tomatoes. the keftas de spinica, great recipes. And then finally, I have the Sephardic cookery, traditional recipes for a joyful table. And this one's from the Women's Division of Central Sephardic Jewish Community of America from New York. So it's just, I love like reading through them, reading the histories of these people, and amazing recipes just passed down from generation to generation. So I wonder if some of our own relatives are in these cookbooks. You never know. Okay, so should we take it in?
Well, we still have like 5 more minutes.
We still have 5 more minutes. So does anyone have any, Terry, are you making it? Yeah?
If anybody wants to unmute themselves and share something, please feel free to do that.
Yeah, mine's in the oven, it's already in the oven. I just finished my syrup. So this is the first time I'm making this. I can't believe I've not done it in all these years. So.
And it's so easy, isn't it, Sherry?
Very, very easy.
Yes.
My fila dough was much bigger pieces. I cut them almost in half. I had like 18 pieces and they were really big. So I still have like half a box of fila left.
I use a smaller Pyrex, and so I did cut mine in half, and they fit in the Pyrex that I use perfectly. So I'm just playing around right now, making something like little things here for the kids to eat. You know, well, not giving them the good stuff. You know.
So we made some syrup ahead of time. That's what this is. It's nice and cold. So we're all ready to go.
I have one question. What if I don't use honey in there? Can you do that with omitting the honey?
You can, but it won't make as much syrup or nearly as much syrup because the honey is it's like a cup and a half or a cup and a third of honey. And the rest of it is really just like a third of a cup, well, 2/3 of a cup of syrup if you don't put the honey in.
Oh, okay.
You could probably try it with something like agave or something like that, but I've never done that before.
Okay.
If you can't eat honey.
Right. It looks delicious anyway, so I can't wait to make it.
Thank you for saying that. That's so kind.
Beth-Ann and Sandy, do your kids ever help you make this? Like, are there elements of it that are kid-friendly to involve children in?
Well, I think the painting with the butter, if they're gentle, it depends on your child. The making the filling is definitely kid-friendly. I'd say putting in the cloves. The layering with the fila, if it could be a little bit, they have to be gentle, I guess. You know, so I mean, if you're there helping them, then yes, absolutely. I let my daughter do pretty much everything she wants in the kitchen because she just loves to cook. And she's 10, so she does okay with that. My boys, no.
Not so much.
Not so much.
And while we have a minute here, I also wanted to wish Sharona and Rabbi a very happy anniversary with many more years of health and happiness together.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Of course.
There's a request in the chat before we continue. Can you repeat the name of your cookbook from New York?
Yes. Is this the one? No. Sephardic Cookery, Traditional Recipes for a Joyful Table. Okay. I got my,
Jill, the oven mitts.
yeah.
I think it's the time to bring out the baklava from what we put in. We actually put this version in as we started with this meeting. So your baklava, if you put it in, is probably not quite ready, but in like half an hour, and then we'll check it. Probably in about half an hour, the other baklava will be ready, maybe a little longer. And we're gonna, oops, put the baklava here.
So this is what it looks like. It's kind of a golden brown topping from the butter. Can everyone see that? It's kind of hard to see, but it is a golden.
I think it shows up okay.
I don't know. It looks white.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to pour the syrup on?
Okay.
It looks beautiful though.
Smells
Do you want it?
amazing.
Do you want to?
No, I don't want to
Make it even.
Okay, I guess I try and pour it in the cracks. So I try and pour the syrup into the cutted pieces. You could even cut the rest of it the way down before you pour the syrup. You can actually hear it bubbling.
If you are freezing it, would you freeze it before cooking it?
I would freeze it after, I think.
Okay.
Because I feel like if you freeze it before, you probably could, but I'd be worried about the top kind of drying out because it's fila, and I think fila dries out very easily.
All right.
So when we are pouring this all on, and there's a little bit of a pool of honey or syrup at the top, but it will absorb in over time.
And I just kind of swirl it around. Yeah, as it gets, as it cools, the syrup will absorb. And especially on the bottom layers, it will form like a caramely taste to it. It's just so delicious with the honey and the butter. And then also, you don't want to eat this with the cloves. Cloves are crunchy and they don't taste good. So you want to remove the cloves before you eat it.
Do you remove them before you serve it, or do you serve them and then instruct guests to remove them?
I would remove it before I served it, just because I don't want to burden my guests like that. But I've actually eaten a clove, and it's a strong taste, which you get some of that taste into the baklava, which is why it's good to cook it with the cloves in it. And the cloves just smell so good anyways. They do.
Now, I have also made this. It's funny, in preparing for this presentation, Sandy and I kind of differed a little bit. In the past, when I've made this, I've actually put the cloves in between the corners of the baklava instead of right on top of it, because I think it's going to leave a hole when you pull them out, right? A little hole in the middle.
I just think it looks pretty.
It does look pretty.
Some people sprinkle sesame seeds on it instead of using the cloves. And I've seen it that way. I've never made it that way, but I've seen it from other people that way.
Mm-hmm.
I just sprinkled sesame seeds because I didn't feel like pulling out the cloves and doing that. So we'll see how it goes.
But I do think the cloves do add an element of flavor to it.
Yeah, I don't like cloves too much, so that's probably
If you don't like cloves, leave it out. Yeah. Any other questions?
Do you cut off the little edges that are kind of up at the sides, or when you take them out of the pan? Is that how you trim it? You know how the phyllo doesn't lay perfectly in the pan.
I usually don't serve those pieces. I usually reserve those for the cook. Because they're not as, as perfect or uniform. Yeah, because there's enough pieces in the middle. There's quite a few pieces in the middle that you don't necessarily have to serve that. I mean, it all tastes the same, but it doesn't look as finished.
Right, but I actually like it. That's my favorite part, is the part with the little crunchy edges on it. So yeah, don't throw those away. Just, I wouldn't necessarily serve it to the good
I
company.
wonder if I can take one out.
When you're doing the syrup, do you start adding the honey after you've removed the syrup of the stove?
Yeah, you can take the syrup off the stove and put the honey in, but you want the honey to dissolve in the syrup. And if it's too cold, it's harder to make it dissolve. So if you leave it on the stove for a minute or two while you put the syrup in and stir it to get it dissolved and then pull it off, that's okay too. But you just want the honey to melt into the syrup.
Thank you.
Sure.
And as I'm cutting this, I can kind of feel that it's kind of a little bit on the liquidy side. So you definitely don't want to serve this warm. You can warm it up afterwards, but you really want it to let it cool and let the syrup absorb through all the layers, or else it's going to be a little soupy.
Yeah, it's better if you let it sit at least an hour, but really overnight would be better
Before you serve it, yeah.
for serving it.
Yeah, I think even if I take this little piece out, it's gonna seem really kind of soupy. I don't know if you can see it.
Oh, it's probably hot.
It is hot.
Because you're dripping
Hot.
hot syrup on yourself.
Do you wanna,
Can you tilt it down so we can see it though? Without you burning yourself? All right. Oh,
see the layers?
yeah.
Yeah. And then the syrup kind of caramelizes on the bottom. Yeah, love that part. Yum. And then I guess you would just pull this out.
Okay, so there are a few questions. One is, do you want to cut it into pieces when it's still warm or when it's cooled down completely?
It's easier to cut it when it's still warm, because if you wait till it cools and the syrup hardens up, it makes it a little harder for your knife to get through.
So I'm even going to right now, actually, I'm cutting through to make sure it's cut all the way through. And some people like to do this. Actually, maybe this step should be done. Maybe the step should be done before you pour the syrup on, even to make sure the syrup goes down all the way, although it clearly is now.
Right. So the cooler it gets, just the harder it'll harden up a little bit, and it just makes it that much harder. It's very sticky, to cut through.
Yeah.
Okay, there was a question of what page of the LA Cookbook did this recipe have? Is it on, rather?
Oh, my recipe, I want to say it's page 88. I think it's this one. It's page 88. Yeah, and it's written by Catherine Caraco Elias from Izmir, Turkey. This recipe has been with me from Seattle to Chicago, back to Seattle. Yeah.
And a question about getting a copy of the SBH cookbook. That requires contacting the SBH office. So I'm going to put the phone number and email address in the chat box so that you can contact the office to work that out. We should make it easier and have it on like Amazon or something, but we're not there yet.
How much is that, Sharona?
You have to contact the office.
Okay.
Did you grease the pan before starting? Is a question.
No.
Well, we buttered it.
We put it with
we
butter.
brushed it with butter before we started putting anything else on it.
You didn't show them? Oh, maybe they didn't.
I did. So if you want to spray Pam on it before, you could, but I don't think it makes any difference in terms of getting it out of the pan.
I like butter though. But you could spray it with Pam. In fact, Sandy, didn't you say you made this once with spraying it with Pam?
Right. I've made, this is so not like traditional, but I have made baklava before using the butter flavored Pam instead. And you just or even the regular pan, just spray each layer. I have a cousin who had this as a recipe. You just spray each layer with Pam and layer another layer of fila on instead of using the melted butter. And it tasted pretty good, I have to say.
And it was lower in fat?
You'd think it would be lower in fat without a cup of butter in it, but I use quite a bit of Pam.
So, sorry. Esterina has asked about oil and not butter, and that is a flavor difference, but it's largely about keeping it pareve and having a meat meal versus a dairy meal with the baklava.
So when I want to make it pareve, this is what I use. Earth's Best. It's a vegan buttery sticks, pareve, kosher, and I find this is actually, my cousin Ellie taught me, this is the best pareve flavor to use. But there's other brands as well that you can get pareve butter, margarine even, and melt that and use that to make it pareve.
I used one called Country Crock Vegan Butter now. I've not used it for this before. So what happened is I melted it earlier, and as I was reaching the end, it started to solidify butter. So we'll see.
Oh, this looks so yummy. It smells so good. You guys will be smelling it soon too in your own kitchens. This is definitely a great Rosh Hashanah dessert to have.
Go. No, nothing to say. Any other questions or comments?
I don't think so. I think we're really excited about your baklava and making our baklava. I mean, let's see that masterpiece again.
Here, I'm gonna chill.
It's another piece.
Wow. That is amazing.
Smells really good.
And it wasn't that hard to make, really, but people get so impressed, are so impressed by it because it just tastes so good. It tastes and looks like it's something very difficult and time consuming, but really.
You just did it in an hour.
It takes longer if you make your own fila, though.
Yeah. Which I almost did this morning, but what else can we say about this?
It might just be time for thank you. Thank you so much for doing this. This was amazing. I've learned so much. I assume everybody else has. Wow. Thank you for sharing this and sharing about your family. It's been such a pleasure. And I hope to see people next week for Jeannie's Hihiratzones Part 2, which should be also delicious and more fila.
I like fila.
Also, I just want to thank you, Sharona, for narrating and coordinating all of this, and the Seattle Sephardic Brotherhood organization for sponsoring this. And yeah, Happy New Year to everyone. Enjoy your baklava. And thank you for joining us. I really appreciate and enjoy seeing everyone.
And have a sweet New Year.
Sweet New Year.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Enjoy.